Welcome, Professor Jiang Tianjiao,
Yes.
to the program. For those who don't know, you are the Associate Dean of the Director of the BRICS Research Center, and you are also an Associate Professor at Fudan University. So thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure, Danny.
Great. Well, let's talk about China's real role in the development of not just China, but the rest of the world. And in particular, I know you've done a lot of work around the Global South as an Associate Director of the BRICS Research Center. We are seeing China's role in multilateral mechanisms like BRICS expand. So could you talk about, we have the summit in Kazan in Russia in October coming up after an initial round of expansion. Could you talk about where China fits into this overall geopolitical and geoeconomic landscape we are witnessing, in particular in the development of the Global South?
Yeah, so this is another very important topic for global politics. I should say the aim of the BRICS cooperation is to shape a more balanced world order. Well, but personally, I'm pretty sure that BRICS cooperation is not anti-United States. It's not an anti-US bloc. No, I will not call it even like a geopolitical bloc. No, well, in my view, my very personal view, I think the aim is just for more balanced world order. Because if you go back to the very beginning of the BRICS cooperation, the idea, for example, around like 2008, it's because of the economic crisis. And I think most people in the world found that now, at that time, the economic order was not fair, right? And with the development of so many emerging countries, emerging powers, their rights cannot be represented in the world economic order, in World Bank, in IMF, and so many important multilateral economic institutions. So here comes BRICS. So they want to make some reforms, some changes to the world economic order, make it a balanced one, and who can represent the appropriate role of the emerging countries. So they want to change this kind of order and also global institutions. And then BRICS cooperation developed in, I think, various fields, not just about economic issues, but also even like global health, climate change, and even like international security issues. Because we found that so many problems here and there, like global governance issues that we need to fix. And there are so many like deficits that we need some contributions from Global South countries. And they develop very fast. And I think their voice should be heard. But all of these reforms, I think they take place in peaceful ways. It's not like, for example, the so-called like bloc to bloc or the Cold War in the past. I think it's a very different situation. Yes.
Great. Well, I've heard you talk about the responsibility of great powers and the responsibility of bigger powers in the world. What is China, given that China is becoming a power in its own right? What is China's responsibility to not just BRICS, but this development of a multipolar world? And how is it fulfilling that responsibility?
Yeah, that's, I think, so for domestic politics, I think China is trying to find a way, the way of modernization, but different from the US one. but they believe that we can have different ways toward modernization. It doesn't have to be the US model or the so-called Washington consensus. It can be something different, but the aim is to become a modernized country. I think this is a common goal we share. I think all of us can share in the world. All of the countries, they would like to be a modernized one. They want to have prosperous society. People want to have better life. That's fair. But China just believes that we can find a way for ourselves. So I think they emphasize the so-called independent and self-reliant in terms of economic development, science and technology development, and etc. So I think in this kind of strategy, it's both, I think, domestic and international. China believes that we achieved great success in domestic development. So at the same time, we can have more international cooperation with global South countries. And the interesting thing is that, in fact, there are so many global South countries, they're approaching China. They also would like to know what's the different ways toward modernization. They tried the Western way maybe previously, but some of countries they don't think it's good for them, right? So they want to try something else. I think that's fair. So there must be some countries that they can have closer cooperation with China, and they prefer Chinese way of development. So this is my understanding of China's development and also China's international cooperation on development. And China believes that when we have this kind of international cooperation on development, we will have a more powerful global South society, and global South countries can help each other toward a more prosperous world.
Often we hear from, especially the Chinese side, about synergy between BRICS, China's own Belt and Road Initiative, and other multilateral mechanisms like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Could you talk about specifics of what it means for these multilateral and multipolar efforts to be synergized?
Danny, to be frank, I'm not quite sure about the synergy you called here. I think they are, all of the multilateral cooperation mechanisms you just mentioned, they are a very important part of China's diplomatic strategy. But I think they are also different platforms. They have their own characteristics. I don't think they are, because, for example, Belt Road Initiative, I think it is led by China. But also, I think China welcome a third party to join to have projects together. BRICS is quite different, in fact, because BRICS is, as you mentioned, it's multilateral. Multilateral means that 5 countries, 10 countries, they have equal rights. So they make decisions from for example, now I know that it's still based on consensus. So it's not like China dominates the role of BRICS and make it part of China's grand strategy to the world. No, I don't think it is the way how BRICS works, in fact. So I think they are very important platforms for Chinese diplomatic strategy, but it's not like a tool for China's the so-called great power competition. It's different. They have their very different roles to play. So I think that's my answer to your question.
Yes. Well, we are in Shanghai right now, and we are talking as those who do a lot of research on U.S.-China relations. Now, I would like to talk about how the U.S. and what is often called the unipolar order is responding to a mechanism and the growth of a mechanism like BRICS and this larger trend of multipolarity. What's your view on how the U.S. in particular is responding to these developments?
Yeah, so I think, in fact, it doesn't even matter. I mean, the development of BRICS is bigger if it is successful or not. I don't think it doesn't even matter. I mean, for the United States. So from my view, the U.S. will just follow its grand strategy and develop its alliance system and contain China. It won't change. It won't change anything. So whether the U.S. unipolar system is responding to China's development, I think yes. As you can see, for example, there have been a lot of not just the security alliance system, but also like economic and tech blocs formed by the U.S. against China, the so-called like chip bloc, also the many other like export control blocs. So I think it's well, unfortunately, I think it's not good for a healthy like economic relations, not just for like China-U.S. relations, but for all of these countries involved in the so-called great power competition, because they pay a lot for this kind of like block or even sanctions, export controls. They pay a lot. It increases the costs of doing business, and it brought a lot of risks, uncertainties for business companies. I heard a lot of complaints from businessmen here in Shanghai. Well, I think in the past it provides like great opportunities for them, huge market, skillful laborers, very convenient logistics, infrastructures, and good business environment, everything. But I think now they suffered a lot from the tech war, trade war. So unfortunately, it's not good.
One of the consequences I've noticed with regard to attempts to contain China's development and respond to this growing multipolar world has been, as you mentioned, economic warfare. But the results of that has seemingly had one of the costs be the movement away from one staple of U.S. dominance, which is the dollar system. And much talk about BRICS has been about, at least in the Western media, and I think much of those who pay attention in the United States and the collective West to these developments view BRICS as a possible alternative mechanism, or creating one, to the U.S. dollar system. We see that in bilateral relations with China and Russia and China and other countries. What's your view on this particular consequence of U.S. foreign economic policy when it comes to containing China?
Well, dollar is a very complicated question, in fact. I think Russia and Iran, Iran, the new member of the BRICS, they must be very interested in developing the so-called BRICS payment, or even like a BRICS currency, to as alternative to dollars, to reduce the impact brought by dollars and also the sanctions from the United States. I think this is reasonable because they suffered a lot. But for China, I think our position is that so we don't like the hegemonic effect brought by dollars. We also suffer a lot from that. It caused inflation and also a lot of financial risks brought by dollars. But if we will have the BRICS payment or BRICS currencies in day and night, I don't think so. It's not that easy. You need to have the payment system. At the same time, you need to be sure that all of the businessmen companies, they will also use the same payment system. Then it will become a global payment system and global currency. But for now, I didn't see it. I think that dollars still has its very powerful role to play in the world. But at the same time, I think BRICS countries, including China, I think they are having some mechanism. For example, the BRICS, the reserve cooperation. They want to hedge the negative impact brought by, the abuse of dollars' power of the United States. But at the same time, we are still under the same, the international financial system. We still face the reality. So I don't think that we should exaggerate the current, this kind of great power competition and the change of the financial tools, because it will also be a great shock to people who would like to invest, who would like to do business. But we need to understand that it will be a step-by-step process, and it depends on the development of BRICS countries themselves. So as long as they have quite robust economic growth, then they will have, I think, more powerful economic and financial system to protect themselves.
Well, back to BRICS. Recently, there was a policy change to pause growth, to pause the growth of members inside of BRICS after the last summit that BRICS held, where there was the expansion of, I believe it was 6 other countries into the growing mechanism. What do you expect from BRICS moving forward, and what do you know about this decision to pause growth for now in terms of members? Because I believe there's something like 40 plus countries that want in.
Yeah, it's just my very personal guess, because there are too many countries waiting in line. And in fact, it's still not quite clear what's the criteria for choosing new members. Well, I'm not sure, because they have released the criteria. So I think it's also a hard job for all of the current BRICS countries to make the decision, right? Because if you pick this one, that one, then it may hurt other countries. But you cannot just let all of them in, right? It will hurt the efficiency of the cooperation. So I think they need to think twice. So they need to also make the balance between being equal to all of the partners, but at the same time, they need to make sure the efficiency of making decision and also cooperation. So I think it's the very beginning of the expansion of BRICS, but it's also a very important. I think it's practice that the current BRICS countries, they need to think about. So what's the aim of our expansion and future development, and how we will achieve that. So there must be a lot of discussions, even negotiations among them. And I don't have answers to whether they will accept more new members, but I think it is worth like doing research. And I also expect more successful cooperation from BRICS countries.
And finally, you've been generous with your time. I wanted to just ask you about, from here on forward, we are seeing this growth of a multipolar world and China's increasing and growing role within it, really as a leader of it. How do you view the prospects and the opportunities in development and also in geopolitics? Oftentimes, when we hear about China and a multipolar world in the West and in the US in particular, it's not a positive thing. So could you maybe give your opinion or assessment on what we can look forward to as this world order continues to develop?
I mean, it's a very hard question. I just would like to share my hope. I think it will be different from the history. I don't think the Cold War will appear again, because I think it's quite a different situation now. As we have discussed, global South countries, they are very powerful now. They are, I mean, both China and the United States, we cannot ignore the very important role of the global South countries. And I think they are also very clear about this. And so there will not be the so-called like, I think the China bloc versus US bloc. I don't see it in this way. It will be very complicated, because you can see, for example, India, Brazil, they would like to play very important role in making the world order a more balanced one, but in peaceful way. So I don't think they are either like China's side or US side. I think this is a very outdated thinking or mentality. I think both China and the United States, we need to understand that this is a very different world. And besides great power competition, I mean, competition is normal. And in fact, healthy competition makes business, makes science and technology development better, I think. That as long as it's healthy competition, right? It's not vicious circle. It's not maybe securitized or geopolitical, thinking there. But besides great power competition, I think there are still so many global governance issues we face today, which requires both countries to work together, right? The COVID, I think maybe next time we will face another more serious pandemic soon. And also artificial intelligence. It may really bring some existential risks to the human beings. And outer space, well, there are, I think, so many uncertainties. So I cannot tell the future, but I really hope that both sides, especially the young generation from both sides, they can understand this, and we will not repeat the mistakes in the past.
Yes, it would be very much a positive thing if the United States could view competition with China more so about how can the U.S. progress and build upon and develop new ways of getting better in its own right. rather than viewing it as zero sum, which I think is what we have seen. So I wanted to talk to you because your expertise is very important in this moment where we have a growing conflict between the United States and China, but this has world implications. And so my first question to you has to do with this idea of China as a threat to the U.S. economy in particular. We hear China as a threat to the U.S. jobs, to the U.S. economy, but what is China's view of the world implications of their relationship, especially on the development and economic front?
Yeah, I think, when China faced trade war with the United States, I think most Chinese people, they think that, I think it's a great shock to them. So at very beginning, I think Chinese people they were not prepared for that. It's a great shock. They believe that both sides, they are like economic partner. And I think most people really believe that it's win-win model. And if you ask normal Chinese people, they will also say that, in fact, China provide the huge market to the United States. Well, they will not think about robbing jobs from Americans. No, it will never come to their mind. They believe that we provide the market, and we got a lot of investment from the U.S. We have a lot of American brands here, all of fast food, coffee, Starbucks, but also some high-end industries developing here. And it also brings a lot of benefits to China's development. I think that's the truth. I think so. For many years, for decades, I think it's really mutual beneficial economic relationship. So that's why I say that at the very beginning of the trade war, I think it's a great shock to Chinese people. So they were not prepared for that. And now I think after maybe 5 or 6 years, I think most people they also get used to that, because it's always the sanctions. Sanction was they are still there, export controls, tariffs, more and more export control sanctions. So now they get used to that, and they believe that maybe it's part of the so-called great power competition. So I think it's hard for Chinese companies. It's also hard for some Chinese people because they still want to have good economic relation with the U.S. and they still want to send their children to the U.S. to have high education programs, to have normal exchanges between these two countries. So I think, but unfortunately, we are in the middle of this. So I think it's important to think about how to get out of the vicious circle.
In the U.S. media, Americans, their exposure to China now is one that is characterized by conflict. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned great power competition, and this has both included economic aspects, as you have said, but also it's included the increasing threat of a spillover into military confrontation. Mm-hmm. But what is China's and Chinese people's view on this? Because oftentimes we are hearing that it is China that is this aggressor that, especially on the economic front, is almost manipulating world politics for its own benefit, while the United States is the one stepping in to stop that. But what is the Chinese people's view on this?
That's a very, very interesting point, because I think most Chinese people, and I think most of my colleagues, they will think in the opposite way. They believe that it is the United States who try to intervene Chinese on politics and contain China's development. So this kind of, I think I hear, quite different voices from both sides, and they always fight against each other. And even for normal people in China, I think maybe most of them, they believe that, as I said, they hope that they can have economic relations with the United States because they really get benefits from them. But at the same time, when we have the trade war here, when we have great power competition here, they believe that, well, maybe the U.S. has the plot for decades that they will contain China eventually. So I think it becomes some kind a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think, especially, in fact, it's also for both sides. I mean, for China, they believe that the United States will finally contain China's development. And for the US, they believe that China will rise and challenge the US the dominant position in the world. So I think, again, how to get out of this vicious circle is very challenging. And as you mentioned, that it's not only about economic relations. It interacted with military security issues, also maybe some territorial disputes surrounding China, which make the case more and more complicated, and with a lot of third parties involved. So I think that yes, this is a great challenge we are facing today.
Professor Jiang Tianjiao, it's been really good to be with you. Do you have any final words before we close?
Danny, please enjoy your stay in Shanghai. It's a beautiful city, and please also bring more American friends here. I think it's very important for us to keep the people-to-people exchanges.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.